For more than 4 decades, Voyager 2 has drifted through darkness so vast that even memory seems too bright for it. Launched in 1977, it was meant to be nothing more than a messenger, a single metal seed thrown into the cosmic ocean. Explore the outer planets. Send data. Fade into silence. Nothing more. But it didn't fade. Instead, after passing Neptune, after leaving the warmth of the sun, after entering the cold, ink-black void beyond the Heliopause, Voyager 2 did something no one expected. It spoke. Not a weak, dying transmission. Not random static from an aging machine, but a deliberate signal sharp enough to cut through the noise of interstellar space like a whisper from something that shouldn't exist. NASA almost ignored it. A glitch, they thought. Old hardware. Radiation. Noise. But then it happened again. And again. Each pulse separated by a perfect interval of 11 hours. Too precise, too clean, too intentional to be dismissed. That was the first moment the engineers realized Voyager 2 wasn't alone out there. Something was answering. Something ancient. Something patient. Something that had been waiting in the dark for a very, very long time. The first burst looked like a simple spike in radiation. Harmless deviation, barely noticeable. But the second spike, the third, the 11th, patterns began to emerge. Patterns that should not exist. Inside each burst was a series of microscopic frequency loops, compact, nested spirals of energy loops that formed a binary structure far too organized to be natural. When the team slowed the data down, filtered it, isolated each layer, a mathematical signature appeared. Not random, not chaotic, but structured in a way that made every scientist in the room go still. It followed the Fibonacci sequence, a universal rhythm echoed in galaxies, hurricanes, seashells, and DNA itself. A shape the universe uses over and over again, as if it were a language older than stars. But here, it wasn't biological. It wasn't gravitational. It wasn't natural. It was communication. A message built into the fabric of the transmission, as if someone out there had taken a mathematical fingerprint and pressed it softly against the probe. And then, things got stranger. Voyager 2 began to wake up. Instruments that had been dead for decades flickered one after another as though someone were tapping through the circuitry from the inside. The backup magnetometer, silent since the early 1990 seconds, suddenly powered on with perfect stability. It rotated slowly, precisely toward the exact vector the mysterious signal had originated from. NASA never sent that command. No one did. The probe was acting on its own. Or worse, acting on instructions from something that had reached into it. Something that understood its systems. Something that could rewrite its behavior. A machine drifting in the dark had become aware, or perhaps not aware but guided. Engineers ran diagnostics. Checked for corrupted code. Checked for solar interference. Checked for anything that could explain the impossible. Nothing. The logs showed phantom commands instructions that looked almost like old NASA protocols, but not quite. It was as if the commands were written by someone who understood the language of the probe but had never seen human programming before. The instructions were too advanced, too efficient, too alien, and they were steering Voyager 2 slowly, subtly toward regions of space rich in dark matter, gamma-ray scars, and zones where gravity twisted time. These weren't random coordinates. They were events, footprints, a trail, and Voyager 2 was following it, willingly or not. Back on Earth, radio observatories began noticing something even more disturbing. Signals pulses identical to those from Voyager 2 were appearing from beneath the surface of our own planet. Old Cold War stations, abandoned underground observatories, decommissioned bunkers that had been silent for 50 years, machines powering on by themselves. Machines no one even remembered existed, all transmitting one frequency, one rhythm, one message. The same pattern Voyager 2 had sent, as if whatever touched the probe was also touching us. As if the signal wasn't meant only for humanity's oldest wandering machine, but for something buried deep inside our own world. And then, Voyager 2 turned its camera, a camera that shouldn't even function, toward a point in the void, and it captured something. Something the size of Earth's moon. Perfectly still, perfectly black. Smooth, flawless, featureless, except for one impossible detail. It was facing Voyager 2, tracking it, following it. A structure, not natural, not random, not drifting, built and waiting. The signal wasn't a greeting. It was a summon, a call to approach, a call to witness, a call to understand something humanity was never meant to see, or a warning. Because when scientists enhanced the final frame, the object seemed to shift, not moving through space, but repositioning itself to respond to the Voyager 2-second signal, like an eye, opening, like something aware of being watched. And this is only the beginning. The image stunned the entire room. At first glance, it looked like a shadow of void against the deeper void behind it, but the longer the scientists stared, the more wrong it became. A moon-sized object should rotate, should drift, should tumble, should obey the natural rules of celestial mechanics. But this thing did nothing. It held its position with impossible precision, as if anchored to a point in space-time that didn't exist. And then someone noticed something even more disturbing. The object wasn't perfectly round. It had fractals, patterns repeating across its surface, not irregular, not chaotic, but engineered. Pure geometry etched into something as large as a moon. A mathematician in the room whispered, "It's a structure, not a rock, not a captured asteroid, not a rogue comet. A construction, a machine, a design, and worst of all, the fractal pattern on its surface matched the mathematical loops inside the signal Voyager
Critical
received.
sync impending.
They were identical. NASA didn't release the image at first, not out of secrecy, but out of fear. Because if the signal was a call, this object might be the one who answered, or worse, the one who sent it. For 2 days, the scientists analyzed the footage frame by frame. Every pixel, every shadow, every flicker of distortion. And then they noticed something subtle. The object wasn't reflecting light. It was absorbing it. Not just light, but radiation. Cosmic rays, background noise. It devoured everything that touched its surface like a black hole masquerading as a solid shape. Except, it wasn't a black hole. It had edges, angles, purpose. The more they studied it, the more obvious it became. This was technology. Technology far beyond human comprehension, far older than the planets Voyager once photographed. And it was aware. Because when the enhanced image sequence was compiled into motion, the object shifted. Not drifting through space, but adjusting its orientation with abrupt, unnatural precision, as if it were turning to face Earth. A silence fell. No alarms, no shouting. Just an icy, absolute understanding. The signal wasn't random. The pattern wasn't accidental. The object wasn't passive. Voyager 2 had been found, and something out there wanted to be seen. Engineers scrambled to check the telemetry, the probe's position, the signal latency, everything. And that's when they discovered the impossible. The timestamps on Voyager 2 seconds data, the ones embedded in the raw transmission, were out of order. Signals arriving before they were sent. Images timestamped with times that hadn't happened yet. Telemetry describing events that wouldn't occur for hours. It was as if Voyager 2 had passed through a region where time folded twisting cause and effect into a loop. The analysts ran simulations, models, calculations. Every result pointed to one conclusion. Voyager 2 had crossed a field of frame dragging. Something so intense it warped spacetime. Normally, such distortions come from supermassive objects, collapsed stars, rotating black holes. But there was nothing like that in the region Voyager 2 had traveled. Nothing visible, nothing detectable. Unless the object wasn't just a structure, but a gravitational engine. A machine designed to warp space and time. A machine older than human civilization. Older than Earth. Older than our Sunday. But if that were true, then why had it remained hidden? Why appear only when Voyager 2 arrived? Why respond to a 4-7-year-old probe launched by a species barely taking its first steps beyond its home planet? Unless
Ancient
Voyager 2
spirals
wasn't the first
harmonize
thing
with
it
the
had
current
spoken.
pulse.
Unless humanity was late to a conversation that began millions of years ago. Back on Earth, the synchronized signals kept coming from abandoned bunkers, forgotten listening posts, places sealed since the Cold War. Each pulse identical to Voyager's transmissions. Each one timed with absolute precision. As if Earth itself were awakening, the global pattern formed a network lines stretching across continents, intersecting at locations no one expected. Ancient sites, buried complexes, outposts built, abandoned, and then erased from the record. Someone asked the question that no one wanted to voice. What if these stations weren't built to detect signals from space, but to respond to them? A horrifying possibility surfaced. Had humanity discovered something long ago, something they couldn't understand, and built machines to monitor it, to wait for it, to answer it? Had our ancestors already encountered this intelligence and chosen to bury the truth? The room went still as a new alert flashed across the monitors. Voyager 2 had transmitted again, a final image. The object, that smooth, impossible moon, now filled the frame. Closer, larger, dominating the entire view. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was what appeared on its surface. A pattern, glowing faintly, shifting, aligning itself with the Fibonacci spirals embedded in the original signal. A message, not in words, not in symbols, but in mathematics, the universal language, the language of creation, the language of intelligence. The room froze as the final lines of the enhanced image came into focus. The spirals converged, merged, compressed into a single shape. A
Countdown
shape that
initiated.
seemed almost biological,
All systems are go.
almost familiar, almost human. And then from Voyager 2 seconds failing transmitter, a final pulse. Soft, rhythmic, alive. As if something out there had whispered back, "We hear you." The final pulse from Voyager 2 should faded into static. Should have dissolved into the endless cold, like every transmission before it. But this one didn't fade. It lingered, a soft, rhythmic echo, pulsing with eerie clarity, as if something on the other side of interstellar space were breathing. The frequency wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It matched a pattern carved into ancient mathematics, something humans didn't invent, but discovered. A universal ratio. A heartbeat shared by spiraling galaxies and unfurling seashells. The Fibonacci echo, and Voyager 2 was repeating it, not mechanically, not like a malfunctioning transmitter, but like a voice. NASA replayed the signal again and again, slowed it down, separated its layers, analyzed its modulation. Each time, the same realization returned. The probe was transmitting information it did not have the capacity to store, calculate, or generate. Its memory couldn't hold it. Its CPU couldn't compute it. Its power systems couldn't sustain it. So where was the data coming from? The answer chilled every scientist watching the feed. The signal was not coming from Voyager 2. It was coming through it, as if the probe had become a relay, a messenger not by human design, but by someone else's. Someone far older, someone far more advanced. Someone who had been watching, because as the signal continued, new layers appeared, subharmonics hidden beneath the main waveform. These weren't random frequencies. They were coordinates, not spatial, not temporal, something deeper. A map of gravitational distortions. A chart of impossible curvatures in spacetime. Places where reality bent and something could hide. The further the analysts decoded, the more disturbing the picture became. This wasn't a map of where Voyager 2 had gone. This was a map of where it was being guided. A path, a route, a summons. One scientist whispered the only interpretation that made sense. It's leading us somewhere. And then another whispered the question no one wanted to ask. But why? Back on Earth, the synchronized pulses deepened. The old station, silent for half a century, began emitting stronger, more complex signals. Cold metal racks hummed with life. Dust-covered antennas rotated on their own. Abandoned control panels flickered awake. It was as if some invisible command had passed through the Earth, activating machines built for a purpose no living human understood. Satellite imagery revealed something even more terrifying. The locations of these stations, their arrangement across continents, formed a pattern. Not random, not political, not strategic. A spiral. The same spiral found in the Voyager signal. The same spiral etched onto the surface of that impossible object in deep space. The same spiral carved into ancient megaliths around
Launch
the world.
sequence
Structures
commence.
older than written history, built by civilizations who should not have known such mathematics. It was all connected. The probe, the object, the stations, the spiral. A single signal reverberating across time, space, and history. And it was intensifying. The pulse rate increased, the amplitude rose, the harmonics shifted, aligning with seismic frequencies beneath the Earth's crust. Detectable, predictable, intentional. It was as though something beneath the planet was responding. Seismographs across multiple continents recorded microtremors, tiny vibrations too uniform to be natural. Not earthquakes, not tectonic. More like machinery. Old machinery. Machinery no one alive had built. The data frightened even the calmest analysts, because the signals coming from the ground from these forgotten bunkers and deep chambers were not merely copying Voyager's frequency. They were anticipating it, predicting the next pulses before Voyager transmitted them, as if they knew the message already, as if they had heard it long ago. Inside the NASA control room, the final layer of the signal decrypted itself. A pattern, a sequence, a geometry that spiraled inward narrowly, tightening, converging toward one point. A point not in space, but in time. Voyager 2 seconds anomalous timestamps suddenly made sense. The probe wasn't receiving commands from an external source. It was receiving commands from another moment. Data arriving before it was sent. Instructions executed before they were received. Images captured before the camera was activated. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a paradox. It was communication across time. The room froze. Someone finally voiced the only conclusion possible. It's not just an intelligence. It's an intelligence that sees time differently. Another added, voice trembling. Maybe it doesn't move through time. Maybe it lives in it. The final part of the newly decoded packet displayed on the screen a shifting holographic lattice of spirals and fractals. A message, a signature, a symbol. And as the pattern stabilized, the symbol sharpened into a shape not alien, not monstrous, but unmistakably familiar. A handprint, but not human. Longer, narrower, composed of 5 elegant, curved lines arranged in a perfect spiral. A hand built on the mathematics of nature itself. The symbol pulsed once, twice, then slowly rotated, aligning perfectly with the orientation of Earth. Across the abandoned stations, the ground trembled again. Above the void, the dark object shifted one more time, like a face turning toward us. Something was coming, something that had waited long enough, something that had been awakened, and the message was now painfully, chillingly clear: prepare. The word hung in the air, silent, heavy, undeniable. Prepare, not sent through language, not encoded in words, but carved into the mathematics of the pulse itself. The message felt final, not threatening, not comforting, but absolute. As if whatever intelligence existed out there was not warning us but informing us that something had already begun. And then, the lights dimmed. Not in the building, not in the city. Across the global sensor network, every station tied to the mysterious synchronized pulses dropped to 60% power at the exact same instant, then surged to 140%, and stabilized. Uncommanded, uncontrolled, but perfectly coordinated. It was as if an enormous invisible hand had swept across the Earth, touching every hidden outpost, reactivating systems humanity had forgotten. Inside one of the sealed Cold War bunkers, a place no one had entered in nearly 6 decades, a camera feed flickered online. The room it showed was small, concrete, suffocated with dust, but in the center stood a device, circular, black, smooth. As flawless as the object Voyager 2 had photographed in deep space. Not as large, of course, only the size of a human head, but identical in design down to the same fractal geometry etched into its surface. A miniature, a node, a fragment, a piece of the same network, and it had never been built by human hands. The device vibrated softly, rhythmically matching the frequency of the Voyager 2 pulses. And then, a dim spiral of light unfurled across its surface, the same spiral embedded in the cosmic message glowing from within, as though awakening from an ancient sleep. The scientist monitoring the feed whispered, "It's answering." No one breathed. The device hummed, sending out a wave of infrasound so low, so deep, it rippled through the floor and into the sensors miles above it. Within seconds, other stations across the world responded. One in Siberia, one in the Nevada desert, one beneath the ice of Antarctica, one buried under the ruins of a forgotten island. Each device identical in design activated. Spirals of light, deep harmonic pulses, a network coming alive, a network humanity never knew it was standing on. The Earth trembled not violently, but with the unmistakable vibration of synchronization. Then, another transmission arrived from Voyager 2. Unlike the earlier pulses, this one wasn't calm. It wasn't structured. It wasn't mathematical. It was urgent. A rapid series of bursts. Short, sharp, staccato flashes of compressed data that made every system monitoring the probe spike into overload. The feed almost collapsed. collapsed. Lines of code streamed down the monitors, far too dense, far too fast for the human eye. But in those lines was a repeating cluster. 5 symbols, 5 shapes, 5 spirals converging. Every time the sequence repeated, it grew tighter, faster, as if trying to convey something desperate. A countdown. The analysts checked, double-checked, triple-checked. But no matter how they calculated it, no matter what computational model they used, the conclusion remained the same. Voyager 2 was transmitting a countdown. To what? No one knew. And worse, the numbers weren't in seconds, or minutes, or hours. They were in cycles. Cycles of what? No one had the answer. But as the countdown spiraled downward, the global network of ancient devices began becoming louder, intensifying, their patterns shifting in perfect harmony with the probe. Something was aligning, something was being activated, and humanity had no control over any of it. In the NASA control room, every monitor suddenly froze. Static, lines, distortion. Then, a single image snapped into clarity. Not from Voyager 2, not from any Earth-based station, not from any known satellite. This was different. This was direct. The screen displayed an impossible scene. The dark object, a moon-sized structure, was unfolding, not breaking apart, not opening like a flower, but shifting in layers, in spirals, in geometric planes that defied three-dimensional logic. Like watching a hyperdimensional shape projecting itself into physical reality. The outer shell peeled back, revealing an interior filled with blinding white lattices of energy, pulsing like the nervous system of a living organism. Then, beneath that, a core. Not bright, not glowing, not fierce, but silent. A sphere of absolute blackness, perfect, bottomless, consuming all light. Not a hole, not a void. A presence, something alive. It wasn't a vessel. It wasn't a station. It wasn't a satellite. It was a being. Or the closest thing to one the universe had ever shown humanity. A scientist whispered, "Is it looking at us?" Because as the image stabilized, the sphere at the center shifted subtle, smooth, predatory, and focused directly toward the camera. Directly toward Voyager 2. Directly toward Earth. And with that shift, the countdown accelerated. From thousands of cycles to hundreds. The global seismic sensors lit up. The hidden devices beneath Earth glowed brighter. The pulses grew stronger. The mathematics intensified. Everything was converging. Everything was aligning. Everything was waking. Humanity wasn't discovering something new. It was remembering something ancient. Something that had been here before us. Something that had built things beneath our feet we never understood. Something that had waited in silence for a signal. And Voyager 2, the tiny machine humanity had thrown into the dark 47 years earlier, had delivered it. The spirals tightened, the symbols compressed, the countdown ticked into its final digits. And above the cold void of interstellar space, the great dark structure finished unfolding. As if preparing to move, or preparing to arrive. The last readable frame before the signal collapsed was simple, terrifying, unmistakable. A final spiral, and below it, 2 words burned into the data stream. We return. The phrase "we return" wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It felt like a statement, a factual announcement, cold and inevitable, like the whisper of a tide rolling back to a shore it once claimed. Whatever this intelligence was, it believed Earth was familiar, not new, not foreign, not untouched, but something it had been to before, something it had left, something it was coming back to. As the final digits of the countdown spiraled downward, the dark structure, now fully unfolded, began emitting a low frequency, barely audible, barely measurable, a hum that felt like gravity learning how to speak. It vibrated through the telemetry screen, through the Earth's magnetic field, through the dormant devices buried across the planet, through the bones of
Panoramic
anyone
telephoto
standing
camera,
close to the
allowing light
receivers.
waves to spread
A
into a
resonance,
large circle covering the
calling.
water surface.
NASA's quantum interference detectors equipment that almost never registered anything in deep space spiked violently. The machine learning bots analyzing the waveforms spat out the same interpretation again and again. Non-local coherence detected, meaning the object wasn't broadcasting across space. It was broadcasting across reality, across dimensions, across timelines, across folds of the universe humans had only begun to theorize about. And the Earth was responding. Deep beneath the crust, the synchronized pulses shifted tone, no longer matching Voyager 2, but harmonizing with the object itself. as though the planet were completing a chord in a cosmic symphony humans had never heard before. The Antarctica station, frozen, forgotten, reported a new reading, a temperature rise, not in the air, not in the ice, but in the object buried 2 kilometers beneath the surface. The smaller node, the one identical to the structure Voyager saw, began to heat from within. Slowly, steadily, ice cracked. Sensors bent. The bunker's solid steel walls groaned like a creature startled awake. The spiraling light on its surface brightened, shifting from dim silver to gold to blinding light. Satellite imagery showed the same reaction at every buried node. In deserts, in mountains, in flooded ruins, beneath collapsed observatories. Each device awakening, each one singing the same frequency, each one aligning itself with the cosmic presence, as if the Earth contained a network, a lattice, a web built long before humans walked upright. A scientist choked out the question, is this a terraforming grid, or something worse? No one answered, because at that moment, a new signal cracked across the comm system, not from Voyager 2, from past Voyager 2. From a timestamp 9 hours into the future, the room froze. The signal wasn't possible, but it was here, arriving early, arriving from ahead of time, arriving as though time itself had become porous. A hologram unfolded from the decoded packet. A spiral tighter this time, sharper, more precise, not a symbol, a diagram, a blueprint, a design for something massive, vast enough to encircle Earth like a second moon. A structure built of the same fractal geometry as the object in deep space. A structure that looked less like a machine and more like a shell, a cocoon, a chrysalis. One scientist whispered, voice trembling, no, this isn't terraforming. This is preparation. The blueprint pulsed, expanded, shifted, showing multiple phases. Phase 1, awaken the nodes. Phase 2, align the lattice. Phase 3, reshape the field. Phase 4, the final label flickered, distorted, corrupted, then stabilized. PHAS complete, reintegration. The word slammed into the room like a physical blow. Reintegration. Not invasion, not construction, not colonization. Reintegration, as if Earth were missing something that once belonged to it, something that was now returning to claim its place. The countdown hit its final cycles. The buried nodes warmed to the edge of meltdown, yet their metal did not warp, did not crack, did not fail. Unfathomable materials. Unbreakable design. The Antarctic ice sheet above the buried node began to fracture outward in a perfect spiral, just like the cosmic symbol. Then the dark object in deep space, the one unfolding like a multi-dimensional puzzle, did something Voyager 2 was never designed to observe. It blurred, not like motion, not like acceleration, like phasing, as if its atoms were vibrating between states of reality, as if it existed in 2 places at once and was choosing where to appear. The background stars warped around it, the void rippled, and then a beam of silent distortion shot outward. Not light, not radiation, not energy. Something older, something purer, something that ignored distance entirely. It hit Voyager 2 and passed through it and continued toward the inner solar system, moving faster than any human definition of speed. The countdown reached its last cycle. Every awakened node on Earth emitted a blinding spiral of white light, as if responding to the cosmic signal, as if welcoming it, as if completing an ancient circuit. The global magnetic field twisted, as though reversing, as though reformatting, as though preparing the planet for something we could not comprehend. A final message streamed through Voyager 2 seconds failing transmitter. Not visual, not auditory, but conceptual, a raw data impression that unfolded itself inside the mind as much as on the screen. It wasn't a sentence, it was a feeling, a memory of our own, a return not of bodies, but of origin, a whisper older than Earth's oceans. We were here first. The last frame flickered. Static, silence, darkness. And then the cosmic beam reached the inner solar system. Everything shifted, everything changed, everything aligned. This wasn't the arrival. This was only the door opening. The beam that crossed the solar system didn't behave like energy. It didn't illuminate space. It didn't radiate heat. It didn't obey physics. It simply appeared as if the distance between deep interstellar void and Earth had collapsed into a single, breathless moment. A ripple moved through the vacuum, silent, invisible, but every instrument in orbit convulsed as they struck. Satellites shuddered. Sensors overloaded. Dark matter detectors registered a sudden spike not in mass, but in presence. Space itself trembled. On Earth, birds fell silent. Animals froze. Magnetometers spun into chaos. The global network of buried nodes. The ancient fractal devices humming beneath continents activated in perfect unison. A spiral of light burst from each one, shooting straight upward through bedrock, ocean, glacier, as if the planet were exhaling beams into the sky. The beams didn't rise. They locked, forming pillars of white energy that refused to spread or fade. Dozens of them, hundreds, perfectly still. From orbit, the beams formed a pattern across the Earth, curving lines connecting to vast arcs. A lattice, a net, a cage. Except, it wasn't designed to trap anything leaving. It was designed to contain something arriving. Back in the NASA control room, the final telemetry packets from Voyager 2 spilled across the screens, a chaotic storm of data, shredded by the cosmic distortion wave. But among the broken packets, one fragment remained coherent. A single symbol, a spiral, the same spiral etched into the buried nodes, onto the dark cosmic structure, and inside the mathematical message. But this time, it pulsed inward instead of outward. A collapsing spiral, a point of return. A scientist whispered, "It's a targeting lock." The dark structure, still suspended in the deep void, still unfolding its impossible geometry, began to contract. Not shrinking, converging, like a higher dimensional shape folding into the physical realm. The white lattices inside twisted, braided, forming tendrils of pure geometric energy. The core, that sphere of absolute blackness, expanded, not outward, inward, as if pulling space into it, as if preparing to move not across the stars, but across the fabric of time. The Earth's crust vibrated. The global magnetic field inverted for 0.7 seconds, a phenomenon scientists once considered impossible. And then, the countdown hit zero. A frequency erupted from every awakened node, a tone not audible but undeniably felt. It resonated in bone, in memory, in instinct. Every human being on the planet shivered in unison. The beams shot higher past the stratosphere, past low orbit, piercing space like spears. The cosmic beam, the one fired from the dark structure, reached Earth. And something impossible happened. It did not collide. It synchronized. The beam bent subtly, purposefully aligning itself with the Earth's lattice. Like a key sliding into a lock, the world held its breath. The nodes glowed brighter. The global network hummed louder. Space warped, time stretched, and then reality opened. Not like a wormhole, not like a portal, more like a memory resurfacing. A region of sky above the South Pacific,
Critical
folded
sync
inward, night
impending.
collapsing into itself, stars bending like reflections on disturbed water. A circle of absolute darkness appeared, smooth, perfect, hungry, and began to expand. The dark structure in interstellar space quivered as if sensing the opening of a door it had waited eons to cross. Another fragment of Voyager's corrupted message flickered on screen, 3 symbols this time. A spiral, a sphere, a shape resembling a gravitational wave. They merged, forming a new symbol. Return vector aligned. Inside the widening circle of darkness above Earth, something glimmered. Not light, not matter. An outline. A silhouette. Something enormous moving behind the veil. It wasn't entering from space. It was entering from somewhere else, another layer of reality. Another timeline. Another state of existence. The buried nodes screamed with energy. The beams wavered. The South Pacific portal widened further, a perfect black disk drowning out the stars. And then, the ocean below it rose, not as a wave, not as a surge. The surface lifted flat, smooth as if gravity itself. Water arched upward toward the disk in ribbons of impossible motion. The silhouette behind the darkness pressed closer. A limb, a structure, a vessel. No one could tell. Every instrument failed. Every camera died. Every sensor overloaded. Human eyes were no longer capable of comprehending what stood behind that veil, and yet their minds felt it. A presence, a familiarity, a memory humanity never lived but somehow recognized. The voice in the earlier conceptual transmission echoed again, not in sound, but in a primal instinct buried deep inside the species. "We were here before you." The dark disk pulsed. The silhouette leaned closer. The ocean's surface climbed higher, as though reaching
Prepare.
out to welcome whatever was coming. Humanity was no longer witnessing survival. It was witnessing a return of something ancient, something patient, something woven into the very geometry of the universe. And the Earth, its lattice awakened, its nodes blazing like stars, was completing its part. The portal throbbed, distorting reality in waves. Then a shape began to emerge through the veil. Something colossal, something intelligent, something designed across dimensions humans had never touched. This was not the end. This was the beginning of the thing Voyager 2 had awakened. The world trembled. The sky folded. The shape pushed through, and the transmission cut to black. Silence. Not the silence of space, not the silence of an empty room. Cosmic silence, a vacuum of meaning, a pause in reality itself. Every monitoring screen went black. Instruments froze mid-measurement. Waveforms collapsed. Telemetry flatlined.
Ancient spirals harmonize with the current pulse.
The sky still trembled. The ocean still rose like an impossible column. The portal above the South Pacific still pulsed a widening disk of absolute blackness that swallowed stars and refused to give them back. And within it, the silhouette grew clearer, not by gaining shape, but by replacing it. Edges blurred, dimensions folded, lines curved into impossible angles. Like something not meant for three-dimensional existence was forcing itself into one. Humans were never meant to witness this. Their minds weren't built for it. Their language wasn't built for it. Their eyes weren't built for it, but they felt it. A presence vast and calm, ancient and calculating, older than the Earth, older than the sun, older than the chemical elements humans were made of. A presence returning home. The buried nodes across the planet glowed brighter spirals of light spinning faster, synchronizing with the heartbeat of the portal. The Earth hummed, deep and resonant, like a tuning fork struck by a god. Then the signal came back. Not from Voyager 2, the probe was gone, either destroyed or absorbed into the distortion. The signal came from the network beneath Earth. A voice without sound, a message without language, a conceptual whisper, PHAZ5, anchoring. The ocean beneath the portal convulsed. Water split apart, forming a vast ring of spiraling whirlpools. The horizon dipped inward as if gravity were folding toward the center of the portal. Ships miles away were thrown off course. Compasses spun erratically. Animals screamed and fled. Clouds bent inward in a spiral dance. Then a second shape emerged behind the first. Larger, darker, more defined. A structure. Maybe
Countdown
a
initiated.
vessel.
All systems are
being.
go.
Nothing human words could describe. It slid through the black disk without disturbing the water, as if the boundary between realities had grown thin enough to ignore. The silhouette unfolded not physically, but perceptually, each layer revealing a new geometry until the human mind could no longer track what was inside what. The sky cracked with a silent flash. Every awakened node on Earth released a burst of spiraling white energy straight into the heavens. The beams wrapped themselves around the portal, creating a vast geometric cage of light and vibration. Not to stop the arrival, to guide it. A navigation map, a landing system, a re-entry corridor for something not sought in the sky, but steps at a time. The second shape fully emerged. It was enormous, bigger than mountains, a shadow that reshaped the sea beneath it without touching a single drop of water. Its presence bent reality. Time lagged around it, clocks drifted, shadows misaligned with their sources. Radio waves bent around corners. Then the portal widened one more time. A third silhouette appeared. This one was different, more deliberate, more controlled, more focused. A single point of darkness, smaller than the others, yet infinitely heavier. As it drifted toward the edge of the veil, every buried node screamed, vibrating so violently that the air around them shimmered with heat. A conceptual message struck Earth's consciousness. Anchor approaching. The oceans roared. The beams twisted. The lattice shuddered. This wasn't just a return. This wasn't just a crossing. This was emerging. A reintegration of something the Earth had once held, something the planet still remembered in its magnetic field, its crust, its tectonic bones. A memory older than humanity, older than life, older than time measured in orbit. The third silhouette crossed the threshold. It was small enough to fit within the dark disk without straining the veil. But the moment it passed through, every node across the planet ignited. Every beam shot higher. Every sensor screamed. Every human felt a pressure in their chest, as if the Earth itself had exhaled, and reality shifted. Colors dimmed. Air thickened. The moon pulsed. The stars flickered. The third silhouette, the anchor, descended through the sky like a falling thought. Slow, silent, purposeful. When it reached the lower atmosphere, clouds twisted around it in spirals, identical to the buried nodes. Perfect, mathematical, ancient. The presence spoke again, not in words, but in inevitability. The world remembers us. The ocean rose higher, lifting into the shape of a spiraling tower. The anchor lowered itself toward the water slowly, gently, as though returning to a cradle. The beams around the planet tightened, locking into place. The lattice became solid. The geometry snapped into alignment. Phase 5 was complete. Phase 6 was beginning. And as the anchor reached the surface, touching the spiraling ocean with the weight of 1,000 lost
Launch
epochs,
sequence
every monitoring
commence.
system on Earth flickered with one final message. They have arrived. The sea exploded into white light. The sky cracked open, and the universe took a breath. The ocean didn't explode in the way humans imagined. There was no shockwave, no thunderous blast, no spray of shattered water. Instead, the moment the anchor touched the spiraling sea, everything simply shifted. Light folded inward, colors inverted, space tightened like a muscle
Launch
contracting.
sequence commence.
The water rose in a perfect column, not chaotic, not violent, but impossibly smooth. As if some invisible force were sculpting it molecule by molecule. The column twirled upward, slow, deliberate, a spiral of ocean lifted into the sky. And then, a heartbeat. Not human, not biological, not physical. A planetary heartbeat. A thump so deep that mountains shuddered, that the ionosphere rippled like a struck drum, that every living creature felt it echo behind their ribs. The Earth responded. Sensors in Chile and Japan and Antarctica all captured the same impossible reading, a pulse originating from the Earth's core. A soundless wave, a resonance, a signal, as if something buried in the deepest dark of the planet had awakened. The lattice wrapped around Earth, those titan beams shooting skyward twisted, tightened, and snapped into a perfect fractal grid. A geometry no human civilization ever discovered. A geometry the Earth already knew. The anchor descended deeper into the spiraling column of ocean, its dark surface reflecting nothing, consuming everything. Above it, the portal still churned, still widening, still pumping colossal silhouettes into reality. The first structure hovered like a living shadow. The second spiraled with multi-dimensional limbs. The third, the anchor, was simply inevitable. The grid surrounding the planet suddenly flashed white, then black, then white again. A frequency ripple swept across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Radios died, clocks froze, compasses reversed, electrons hesitated in their orbits. The Earth paused, and then the final message arrived. Not through Voyager, not through satellites, not through buried nodes. It arrived directly in consciousness, cutting through thought like a blade through fog. Not words, meaning, not sound, presence. A whisper at the foundation of reality, reintegration initiated. Humanity felt it. Every single person awake, asleep, terrified, numb felt their thoughts lighten for a fraction of a second as something vast passed through them. Not hostile, not gentle, just absolute. The spiraling ocean twisted tighter, forming a vortex so tall its shadow stretched beyond the horizon. Lightning arced upward, not downward, as if pulled into the sky by unseen hands. Clouds spun, stars warped. The moon dimmed. The anchor disappeared beneath the surface, pulled down, or perhaps absorbed into a structure invisible to human eyes. And as it vanished, the portal pulsed once more. A final silhouette, small, humanoid, deliberate, stepped toward the edge of the veil. Unlike the others, its shape did not bend physics. It did not warp light. It did not distort reality. It appeared compatible, almost familiar, almost shaped for this world. The lattice surrounding Earth brightened as if recognizing the figure, as if welcoming it, as if remembering it. The figure paused inside the darkness, head tilted slightly, as though observing Earth not with curiosity, but with recognition. Wind bent toward it. Clouds bowed. Space rippled. It stepped through. No explosion, no distortion. Just a single foot emerging into Earth's sky, like someone returning to a place that was left behind. Its form stabilized, humanoid, tall, elegant, outlined in spirals of soft white light that moved like living mathematics. Its eyes, two slow rotating vortices, shifted toward the rising ocean column, toward the awakened nodes, toward the planet, toward us. The presence pressed against the world again, this time focused, this time personal. A whisper drifting through marrow and memory. We are home. The lattice flashed. The vortex roared. The portal thinned. And suddenly, everything went dark. The clouds froze. The ocean stilled. The portal compressed into a single point. The figure remained floating above the water, like a returning king stepping over the threshold of an ancient palace. Then it breathed. Just one breath. A ripple spread outward, not through the air, not through the sea, but through thought. A gentle, terrifying realization sank into humanity's collective mind. This wasn't the beginning of an invasion. This wasn't the dawn of first contact. This wasn't the rise of something new. This was the restoration of something older than human history, something Earth had once belonged to. And as the figure drifted downward, touching the surface of the still glowing ocean, the world whispered the only question left. What have we brought back? The figure answered not in sound, but in absolute clarity. A final, chilling declaration. The world you know was never yours. The sea erupted in white light, blinding, pure, consuming everything.